Hey, everybody, welcome to the Renaissance Athletic Club podcast. I'm Todd Johnson. I'm your host for this episode. Joining us, we have an incredible guest, Gretchen Krivak. She is gracing us with her presence today. This is, again, in an ongoing search for the best people in our Southwest Michigan area, experts that are really great in their field, have a lot to say, giving them a forum for it, and also partnering up with those people so that we know at Renaissance that we're bringing you the very latest information from the very best people. So Gretchen is the Director of Didactic Programs and Dietetics, Interim Director of Fitness and Exercise Science Program from Andrews University in Berrien Springs, Michigan. And Gretchen, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for taking the time to see with us today. So
Yeah, thank
tell us a
you.
little bit about yourself and how you got into the field and what's going on with you.
Yeah. So I think my interest started when I was young. I loved sports when I was a kid. My first love was baseball. And so I played t-ball and baseball and then into softball. And I always dreamed of being like one of the first women to play baseball. And then all of a sudden my interest switched to basketball. Like middle school age, I really got into basketball. And I will say in high school, I really turned to basketball mainly because softball became a spring sport
Okay.
and I don't like the cold. So
Yeah.
the practices out there at the beginning of spring
Spring
when you're like
baseball is not
freezing,
fun.
no, it was not fun. And then I was like, I could be inside playing basketball right
Yeah.
now. And my thoughts just started going
I turn down the
towards
opener
that.
every year to Wrigley.
Yeah,
You heard my sister and my nephew go to Wrigley, and I'm like, no, thanks, I'm good.
right. It's just, I remember those practices where the ball would
Oh,
hit your mitt and you didn't want to catch the ball. I would swing
yeah.
to miss the baseball because it hurts so bad when your
Sure.
cold aluminum bat would hit the ball. So I think that was now looking back on it, I was like, why did I really change so much from loving one sport to the other? But I think that was really the driver because when you're a kid, you play
Sure.
t-ball in the summer and then it changes to a spring sport. And then it wasn't my favorite anymore.
Oh, yeah,
So
that's very true. I never thought of
yeah.
that
So
transition, but yeah.
basketball became my passion
Okay.
and I played a lot in high school. And during my high school years, I actually was fortunate to have a really great strength program at my high school. So I really got into like strength training starting in middle school age, 7th grade. I started lifting weights and all the way through high school, I went every morning before school to lift weights. And so I really became passionate
You
about
got the
that.
bug.
Yeah. And
Mm,
so then, my senior year comes, I really didn't know what I wanted to study and I found out like, oh, you can study exercise science, like fitness. So when I found out that could be a career, then I was really interested in that. And in addition to that, I had started doing my own research on like nutrition, and thinking more, just paying a little more attention to like what I ate as an athlete. And so then I had decided I wanted to study both nutrition and fitness, really because I knew there was a big weight issue in the US too. And I was like, I want to help people to lose weight. And I know that they need to exercise, but they can't do it without eating right. So I'm one of the few people who chose my career from the beginning and I stuck with it. I got my bachelor's degree in exercise science from Bethel College, which is now Bethel University
okay.
in Mishawaka. And then I came to Andrews to do my master's degree in nutrition and wellness. Graduated from there, became a registered dietitian. And then now I'm working on my doctorate. I'm nearing the end. I'm on dissertation stage. So I'm doing that through,
Congratulations.
thank you. Yes. It's still a little bit of a long road ahead, but I'm doing that through the United States Sports. Now they're called the University instead of Academy. My dissertation's in the area of sports nutrition, which is really my passion because it brings both nutrition and fitness together and my love for sports. So it's just kind of, it just was like something that I love to do and it all came together for me. And so I'm really excited
I can
to,
see you're really on a mission. This is something that once you decided to do, you're doing your passion, you're living out your passion, which
I
is
am.
awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great.
Yeah,
That's really,
so
really
it's
great.
really cool just to learn more about like and I kind of envision myself more in the area of like sports nutrition or strength and conditioning coach. I did spend some time at Notre Dame. I worked with their sports dietitian as an intern for a while, a long time ago, and then also like we're right neck and right there besides the strength and conditioning coaches. So I do really want to get my credentials as a strength and conditioning coach and I'm not a certified sports dietitian yet. I just haven't had time after my dissertation. That's my next goal, is to officially have that certification.
Yeah, I think the one might cover you pretty well.
Yeah.
It's a little bit more work.
Yep.
But so tell me what really brought you like to where you're at right now? Like what made you decide that you want to include strength and conditioning work along with your nutrition work? Like why did you decide to blend those two careers?
I really just feel like fitness and nutrition go so hand in hand. I could never envision myself doing one without the other. And when I teach my students, so in the department I teach in, I teach both nutrition and fitness students. So most of my classes are either fitness or nutrition. So, I have to teach them scope of practice and so I always tell them, well, if you're a dietitian, you can't be giving them an exercise prescription and
Right.
you can encourage them to walk more or to do more activity, etc. And then if you're in the area of fitness, then you can't be giving a prescriptive nutrition,
Correct.
so
It's very important for all of us staying in our scope of practice.
right.
That's why we really lean heavily on nutritionists whenever we're advising anything for, outside the exercise field. So
Absolutely.
yeah, because it's a diverse, super diverse field. The best thing I tell my clients a lot of times is that you can't outtrain a bad diet, and you really, really need to
True.
focus on your diet because it is, regardless of what you do in the gym. And again, there's just so many studies out there. Your basal metabolic rate, how much time it would take to lose a pound of fat by running or just doing something specific about that. Talk a little bit about like the combination of exercise and diet and why you have to be so concerned with each one.
Yeah. So I think let's start with weight loss because I think that's
Yes.
we have an obesity problem here in the U.S. and about 2/3 of Americans are overweight or obese, and around 60+% of Americans are looking to lose weight. So it's a huge issue, and that I think that was my initial like I want to help people to lose weight, but you can't do it without both diet and exercise. They're both so important because the nutrition piece is key. You want to try to form some good habits, and there's so many diets out there,
You and I were just
and
talking prior to this. I mean, if you want bad information, I mean, a quick Google search will give you tons and tons of bad information
right.
about there. It seems that anything that's been practical advice, again, you have to have a caloric reduction in order to lose body fat. And a lot of people now, the big thing is, well, exercise doesn't matter at all. So this is one of the things maybe you can address for me
Yeah.
too, because I've heard this quite often. Like, it doesn't matter how much you exercise because your body's going to offset it. And there's just been this really good data has been taken and misinterpreted. You want to talk
hmm
a little bit about why exercise is so important along with diet and how the two work hand in hand?
Yeah. So exercise, and I've actually recently heard some things too on YouTube.
Yeah,
I like
surprise.
to listen. I like to listen to music on YouTube, and I constantly get these ads popping up, and they're like, "Don't go to the gym and kill yourself."
Right.
You're doing it all wrong, and so it's those things just blow me away every time you hear some of this stuff, and everyone's looking for the answer, right? But I mean, when you learn about the human body and how it works, the basics of exercise is exercise helps us to burn calories, right? Especially if we're doing cardio exercise. And the simple formula to weight loss is to burn more calories than you're using. Um, Now there are some instances where it doesn't always work exactly for
Right.
everyone. There's reasons why our bodies hold on to fat and etc. And sometimes you have to break through those things. But the bottom line is exercise helps us to burn calories, which helps us to burn fat. And then in addition to that, everyone's looking for how to increase their metabolism, right? You hear that this will take this supplement, it'll increase your metabolism, or drink apple cider vinegar every morning. And I know people that do it. I'm like, what a horrible way to wake up in the morning and to have to start your morning off with that. I'm like, but there's people who live and die by that. They believe in it, right? Because they've heard it. But um, the one thing that can improve our metabolism is by building muscle. Muscle is more metabolically active than fat. So the more muscle you have on your body, the more calories you burn during the day. So when we can exercise and we can form more muscle, our body becomes more metabolically active. So if you're really looking for a metabolism booster, then you want to build muscle. You want more muscle on your body because it's more metabolically active than fat, and you'll burn more calories throughout the day.
And the neat factor of it, the non-exercise calories that you burn are really your predominant amount of calories. You want to talk
Right.
a little bit about that, like
Yeah.
why your basal metabolic rate may ultimately be more important than what you do overall in the gym on a
Right.
daily basis.
So your basal metabolic rate is the amount of calories you burn each day just at rest, doing nothing. So our body has to burn calories to live, to function, to run our organs and everything that's happening in for our heart to beat, our brain to work. So there is the amount of calories that you utilize each day, which we call the basal metabolic rate. And that number is the one thing that's hardest to impact. We calculate it based on weight, age, gender, and then height and weight. So all those things can factor into what your basal metabolic rate is. But the one thing that we can change that number with is based on our muscle mass. So
I always
other
use the analogy of bigger, like thinking of muscle as the engine of the car,
right.
and body fat as gas.
Yeah,
If you have a little tiny engine, you don't burn, no matter how much you drive around, you really don't burn much gas.
it's a
You know,
great
and even when you're
example.
idling, you burn that. So I always think about more time spent idling,
Hmm.
and which is really, truthfully, regardless of how much we exercise, majority of our time is really spent resting. In all
Right.
honesty,
Absolutely. And so you're going to burn more calories overall throughout the day
right,
when you can change that BMR.
right.
And things like if you're on a starvation diet or, some of the other very low calorie diets actually slow down your basal metabolic
That's a
rate.
really important point. So you
Yeah.
want to like, you want to. This is one of the things I really want to try to read out with people, that your scale, weight loss on the scale isn't always maybe a beneficial thing long term.
Right.
That's
Very
why it's
true.
really, really hard to get across a lot of times to people. Like, again, like the scale's a tool,
Mhm.
but there's an awful lot that it doesn't tell you. So talk a little bit about what happens when you go on a starvation diet, and when you get to the point where maybe you start sacrificing some muscle mass.
Right,
Right,
absolutely. So our body's first source of energy is carbohydrates. This is also important when we talk more about sports nutrition. So
right,
carbohydrates are key, and carbs are like they've gotten the bad rap here lately.
right.
We know now it's the keto diet. That's the big thing.
It's
So
come back again.
yeah, it's come back. It has a different name, but it just keeps coming back,
Yes.
right? The Atkins diet,
Right.
the low carb diet. Now it's keto diet. And so it's very popular. Every so many years, it makes a reappearance, and people are crazy about it. And but carbs are what run our body. So they're our first source of energy. When there's no carbohydrates, if we starve our body from that, then we utilize fat next as the second source of energy. And that is, I won't lie, the keto diet is effective at helping people lose weight fast. That's why a lot of people choose it. But the long-term effectiveness of it, most people can't stay on the diet long-term. Our body craves carbs because we're supposed to be utilizing them.
And what's our
Um,
primary user of carbs is our brain,
yeah,
correct? So this is also why when you're on that low carb diet, especially initially, you kind of your body readjusts, but then
right.
after a while, like you really start getting headaches, a little bit brain dead, not functioning quite as quickly.
You're running
So
on ketone
right,
bodies. So your body switches its energy source to ketone bodies, which are formed from that fat breakdown. So, but then when your body runs out of fat, then we start using muscle, and
right.
it can start taking some muscle before that. And you lose your muscle mass, and then that can impact the BMR and other things. So our body will start using whatever it can so that it can keep running all those organs that are so important. So, by staying well fed, having enough carbs, having enough fat, especially for our athletes, this is so important. So, most athletes never have the intention of losing their muscle. That
Right.
is not usually going to be advantageous in any sport, right?
Yeah, and there's so many
So,
sports that are weight dependent. I mean,
yeah.
think of MMA, boxing, people have to make weight for certain things, gymnastics, where they want to keep their weight lower, but
Hmm.
not really always an effective way of doing it is getting onto one of those diets, especially if you got a high energy expenditure from a sport,
Right.
training for a sport. So could you talk a little bit about what's a better way of going about dieting than doing things that will sacrifice your muscle mass? Because again, in the long term, that's going to lower your metabolic rate, correct? And
Right.
it's going to leave you in a little bit worse. That's why when you return, a lot of times when people return to a normal diet, their weight bounces up and they actually
Mhm.
gain more than they initially lost
That's true.
because that
And they go back
metabolic
to
rate
eating
doesn't
those
right.
carbs again, and our body just absorbs that all in really quickly.
Sure.
So,
Sure, kind of going into survival mode almost
yeah,
and identifies again, everything is based off of evolution. We're just trying to survive. Our bodies are just trying to survive. They're not
yeah,
trying to look great. They're just trying to maintain homeostasis, try to stay right where
right.
they're at. So any changes in that, your body automatically adjusts its own metabolic rate too. So how's a couple effective tools like if you were redesigning a program, what would you say for people trying to lose some weight?
So I think the most important thing is always making changes slowly.
Wait, you
When
mean be patient?
Yeah, and that's we're not used to that because
No.
everything we hear on TV and through the media is for change to be fast.
Yeah.
And so we all expect that. We read magazines and, a celebrity just had a baby and she lost all her weight in a month. Well, why does it take the rest of us 9 months? Well, it took 9 months to put on the weight,
Right.
And so it took me 9 months to take it off, and I exercised regularly and watched what I ate and breastfed, all the things that can help, but it was slow and steady, right? But we read magazines and we see things on television, and so it gives us this unrealistic view of what really should be happening. So when it comes to weight loss, we want a slow, gradual weight
Be patient.
loss. Yeah, be patient. The faster it comes off, the more likely you are to gain it, right? We have a lot of research that shows that. So the slower the weight loss, usually
Do you
a
think
half
do you
pound
think
to
that's
a
do you think
pound a
that's
week.
less do you think that's likely, and again, I'm just speculating here, is that, if you're losing it slowly, it probably means that you're also probably not losing muscle mass along with that, or there's
That's
actually
true.
been times when people have gained muscle mass even on a more restrictive diet
Yeah,
because that they're if especially if it's new to somebody, and
right.
somebody's new to them.
Yeah.
So,
So then, yeah, it's probably you're gonna be able to hold on to that muscle mass better, and then, you're gonna be able to if you're making slow changes, a lot of times, these are gonna be changes that you're gonna sustain for a long period of time. A lot of times I see with nutrition and both fitness, it's a all or nothing approach, like, we want it all now, right? We wanna lose all the weight, we have whatever, it's graduation next week, or there's a wedding I'm going to, I gotta get this weight off now, I'm gonna, just eat crackers and
right.
drink water and work out really hard
Beach
and
season's coming, right?
right, yeah. And
Sure.
then we go back to like, okay, now I'm just gonna go back to the way what I was doing before, right? And so we really need to not have the all or nothing approach. It needs to be I like to see small gradual changes. Let's make changes that we can sustain for the long term, like, eating a more healthful diet and then making exercise just part of our normal day and routine that we're doing it on a regular basis, not just going to the gym once a year, to try to lose a bunch of weight all at once, and then we take the rest of the months off. So both areas, and it's hard to have. I know I go through ups and downs too.
Sure.
Um, I have young kids. My life's very busy. So fitting an exercise routine in there, but it doesn't have to be some fancy routine. It can just be being active, moving, have fun with your kids. So do like the little things. Don't think that it has to be some big elaborate program, but just get moving every day. And then, just try to, even if you can't revamp your whole diet, there's budget reasons you might not be able to. There's scheduling reasons. I'm a full-time mom too. I work full-time. I come home, I'm done for the day, right? Cooking
Sure.
a meal's not easy, but how can I get a few fruits and vegetables in there,
So
right?
what are some of the things that you do with your schedule? Because you are extremely busy and obviously in school and you got kids that are active in sports. I know what that's
Yeah.
like. It's really, really tough. So what are the tips you're giving for other parents? Like say like, hey, you know what? I'm 20 pounds overweight. I just want to start losing weight. What are a few of the things that I can do like right now? A couple of the takeaways that I can do right now that's gonna help me get on the right track.
Yeah. So, first of all, if you can get your family involved, that's key, right? So, it's really hard if you're making different meals, like if you're, cooking for your kids and I'm not gonna lie, I have to do that sometimes too. I have one picky eater in the house, and that is my son.
Sure.
And so, I'm like, but I'm trying to get to the point now that he's become more of an athlete. He's eating a lot more, growing a lot. he's becoming a little more receptive to trying different things. So I do make my kids always try something, even if they don't like it and they haven't liked it before. Um, it can take up to 10 to 11 times before a kid will try something and finally like it. So don't give up on it, parents. If you're like, they've tried it once, they don't like it, don't give up on it. I make my kids try every time. I'm like, hey, you're going to try one bite of it. If you don't like it, you don't have to eat it, but we're going to try it again.
Right.
But getting them to be on board,
Make it a family thing.
make it a
Like, this is the way
family
we eat.
thing, right?
Right.
Exercise together. Pick out some more healthy foods that you all like that you can eat together. Because when you have that support, that's really what brings it all together.
Yeah.
So I think that can be a huge
So
key.
making it a team event.
Yeah.
So as far as like exercise prescription, like if you're trying to lose weight, what would be like recommendations, like as far as strength training, as far as cardiovascular training? Like where do I start? Like
Yeah.
what would be one of the best ways to start?
Well, if you're not exercising already, you have to start slow. So that's the key, because that's another area we lose a lot of people in the area of fitness, because people will come, they're gun ho, they want to start working out, and then they get really sore. And it can be hard to push through that.
Which
So
I really want to address this because this
yeah.
has somehow become a badge of honor with people for
Mhm.
being very, very sore. And and again, occasional muscle soreness is going to happen, but it
Absolutely.
is not the be all and end all of an effective exercise program. Exercise does not have to be extreme or extremely painful.
Right.
Consistency is more of the key.
Yep.
So again, like recommendations, like say, like if you were programming a week for somebody, what would you recommend for a new beginner starting out for a weekly long program?
So the general fitness recommendations are to accumulate at least 150 minutes of moderate exercise each week.
And what would moderate
So
exercise be?
So you want to kind of be breathing a little bit heavy. We probably the best way to do this is we call it the talk test.
Right.
So if you're working out with somebody, if you can talk to them, you're not out of breath, but you feel yourself breathing. Like you may have to breathe a little bit between like your conversation. You can't just keep talking and talking like we are right
Right.
now.
Right.
Then that would be a good indication you're at a moderate level.
Okay.
Now, if you really, if you can only get out a word or two, and then you have to take a big breath, right? Then you're probably at the vigorous
Okay.
level. So you would, so that's probably the simplest way
So
of
120,
assessing.
120 hours, excuse me, 120 minutes of
150 minutes.
150 minutes of
Yep.
moderate exercise on a weekly
Right.
basis. Okay.
Yeah.
So that could
And
be walking, bike riding,
yeah, anything you like to do. And that's the other point I like to make. You have to find something that you like to do that's fun. And so I challenge my students with this as well. I teach a general class. It's actually just a general health class, but we talk about fitness, and my students have to come up with a fitness plan for the semester. And I'm like, you need to find what you like to do. Like, figure it out this semester, have fun with it. Maybe you like sports. Maybe, just doing some simple walking, maybe walking on your lunch break. I have a friend at work. We try to walk every afternoon at lunch. Some days it's easier. Some weeks it's easier than
Sure.
others. But if you can find somebody, to do that with, then that can be that could be your program. But really don't go out running because, somebody else runs and
Right.
you're like, I hate running, but I'm just going to do it anyway, because you're probably not going to stick with
It's not
it.
sustainable. So
Yeah.
find something sustainable, something you could do consistently,
Absolutely.
for that amount of time every week. How about strength training? How many times a week would you recommend strength training or resistance training? And talk about
Yeah.
why resistance training. I know that you and I are both in lockstep on this.
Yeah.
Why resistance training is so important, and particularly for women.
Yeah. So the minimum you want to do is at least 2 times a week. If you can do more, that's great. And it really depends. Like, you want to try to hit all your main muscle groups at least twice a week. So that's the key. Now, I share this with my students. I tend to like to break my strength training up into different body parts. So some people may come and work out their whole body all at once, or you can come and work on a couple of body parts one day, and then you skip a day and then work on something else, another day.
Which is
So
more of like getting into more of an advanced program,
yeah,
because obviously as
absolutely.
you get stronger, it puts some more stress on you, and you really do need to
Have more
make a
rest
split.
time.
So maybe
Yep.
initially start with a full body routine twice a week,
Yeah.
along with
Yeah.
your other
So that's
exercise.
where you would start with. Exactly. And then, but the strength training is so important for our long-term health. Again, it helps us to build that muscle.
Mhm.
So that can help our basal metabolic rate. In addition to that, bone health, right? Weight-bearing exercise, very important for our overall bone health, which we're seeing more women especially are more prone to like osteoporosis down the road. But weight-bearing exercise, strength training, resistance training can help with that.
So important too. I mean, I'm a retired firefighter paramedic, and so many people that I had known had, broke their hip and fallen,
Yes.
because their bones have gotten weak. They thought, oh,
Yes.
I said, did you trip anything? No, I don't know. I ended up on the floor. And I mean, there's been people that have lost their lives because of this, because they weren't strong enough to get up, because their bones weren't strong enough to support them anymore. Wasn't that their cardiovascular system failed them?
Right.
So I know our cardiovascular systems are very, very important for our longevity. But I think strength training and resistance training has been kind of ignored as a big,
Yeah,
big portion of that, which again,
absolutely.
resistance training, particularly like I said, for women, is really, really an important factor in it. So
You're right. Well, and the statistics after a hip fracture are very sad.
not
So
good. Yeah,
the
not
1 year
good.
mortality rate is very low.
Right.
And like you said, there are a lot of elderly who it's not like they were up on a ladder or a chair and fell. They
Right.
just fell standing on the floor, or standing upright, and they fell on the floor and broke their hip. And we do see that. And so the strengthening piece is so important because our muscles are what hold our bones and everything in place. It helps protect certain parts of our body. And so if we do not keep those muscles strong, especially our core muscles, this is where I probably saw the biggest weakness. I'm sure you do too.
Absolutely.
Working in the gym, I did have a job in college working in a gym for a few years, and I would take new clients around and show them how to do exercises. And I would say probably 80% of the clients that came in, they would tell me. So I'd ask them like what they really wanted to work on, and but the majority of them would say, "But I don't want to do anything with my back because my back really hurts me." And but
Right.
so I don't want to make it hurt anymore. And so I say, well, the important thing is that means you don't have a lot of strength in your back. Like we need to strengthen your back. And so there was this back extension machine. And so I'd take them over to the back extension machine and I'd show them how to do it. And I will tell you the number of people who came up to me a month, 2 months, 3 months later, they're like, I can't believe how much my back is strengthened. I don't have pain anymore. And so I think a lot of times we have the wrong approach. We think we want to avoid those muscles because they hurt.
Right.
And instead, we need to strengthen our back. We need to strengthen our core, which holds all of that in place. And
Right.
then in turn, we can see results and we can see good
Thank you
changes.
for making that point,
Yeah.
because I've gone through this before. Particularly with me, it's always people who drives me crazy with their hamstrings. Oh, my hamstrings are really, really tight. No, your hamstrings aren't really tight. Your pelvis is tilted forward. Your hamstrings are
True.
very, very weak, and they're very out of balance with your quads, particularly
Mm-hmm.
with people who are runners, which they focus constantly on running. Well,
Yep.
again, your quads get strong, your hamstrings get weak, they get stretched out, and then suddenly they get into a strength training program. They're like, wow, my hamstrings are really, I'm really much more mobile. My hamstrings don't feel tight anymore.
Yeah,
It's about balancing out that strength, though, too. So
it
again,
is.
which is why having a balanced program, having an X amount of cardiovascular training, having an X amount of strength training, and a balanced strength training program is really, really important. Can you talk a little bit about when people get into an exercise program, why it's important to have a plan? Um, than, than just basically walking in the gym and just going at it.
Yeah. So a lot of times what happens when we don't have a plan, and I do the same thing. We just go in and do the same thing over and
Stuff
over
you like to
again,
do.
right? Our bodies are so amazing though. I mean, you go and do something and you're like, "Oh, I'm sore from that," right? But then you keep doing it and wow, it becomes easier, right? And so our body will adapt but then that exercise doesn't become as effective anymore. So that's the main thing. And so we call this progressive overload is the technical term for it. But
Which is a
um
super, super important
yeah.
principle. Like, people have a tendency not to get that. Can you explain what progressive overload is?
Yeah.
Because it's foundation to us. But
Right.
yeah,
So, I mean, it basically is you want to keep challenging your body. So, you need to change up the weights or you need to change up the type of exercise you're doing or the piece of equipment you're doing it with, right? So, by changing it and challenging your body, you're going to be able to help it keep progressing and moving forward. And so, if you just come to the gym, if you're not keeping track kind of what you're doing, you don't have a plan in place, we're all creatures of habit. We just go in
sure.
like, okay, I'm just going to pump this out and, get it done and move on. But really to help keep challenging our body, we want to, formulate a plan and come up with ways that we can keep challenging and making our body continue to adapt so that we can see progress over time.
So adding weight is probably one of the easiest ways to be
Absolutely.
progressively
Yep.
resistant. People often get afraid of adding weight. They say, I don't want to lift heavy because I don't want to hurt myself. And truthfully, it's not the heavy weights that's
Right.
the issue. It's the fact that
It's a form
you
and
did form and you didn't
yep.
prep for it. Most of the time, people are injured because they are doing an exercise they're not familiar with. They haven't prepped for it. They
Right.
haven't really trained for it. It's one of the things that over time, like not having a plan is really a bad idea, and
Right.
ends up because you end up really not being consistent, not even knowing where you started or where your goal is. Really hard to set a goal when you don't really have an idea of where you're at in the beginning either. So
Absolutely.
yeah. So talk a little bit about now the difference with what you would recommend, say, for an athlete starting out, a young athlete starting out, to get them on the right track and move them forward, as versus somebody who's just looking in the gym to get weight. We kind of have an idea where they are at. Again, start simply, get your cardiovascular training in, a couple days of resistance training a week, and then moderate changes in your diet. How about
Yeah.
for a young athlete starting out? Where would you start with them
Yeah.
with recommendations?
So, for our younger athletes, again, you want to start simple. And I think, well, just overall, our in the sports world, things have just been blown out of proportion in so many things. And
It's
first
got to
of
be
all,
extreme. Just everything has to be extreme.
everything
Everything
has
has
to
to
be
be
extreme.
extreme, and if you don't do it till you're dead, or
Right.
or if it's not
And
Instagrammable.
I think the most important thing is that kids need to have fun. Like, I'm
Thank you.
seeing that so much that we have taken all the fun out of it. It's become, it's like the parents are like, how can I sign up my kid for more things? How can I get them? Like, we want everyone on the track to become a college athlete or a pro athlete. And we believe that every kid, if we start them at age 4 and we put enough time into them, then it's going to happen.
Maybe Tiger Woods.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. But nobody realizes that Tiger Woods just had a passion for that, right? I mean,
And
he's
also
one in a
exceptional
million.
ability on top of
Correct.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, but most kids don't have that drive and, the love. And now look at Tiger. I mean, he's relatively young still and he's getting burned out.
Sure.
But we're seeing that more. I've actually read a lot of research on that lately too, and and I'm seeing it too, like trying to get high school athletes. I coached high school basketball for a while, and it's just the kids don't want to play anymore. I've seen a lot of burnout in volleyball. Volleyball, especially in the area I live, northern Indiana. They have these girls playing volleyball all year round. There's, you got to be on a team all the time or you're out, you're not going to play, but the numbers are declining. And so,
Talk a little bit about early sports specialization, because I know this is one of the things that I always encourage parents to do, and I know uh, it. There's best thing in the world I think that you can do for your kids, and I hope you agree with me on this, is that you let them play a variety of
I
sports. It
agree.
teaches them a mass amount of skills, and
Yes.
why is that important? Not only for physical development, but for mental development.
Right. Well, first of all, I mean, sports skills are sports skills, right? And
Right.
so skills translate from one sport to another. And by giving kids a variety, you reduce their risk of burnout, number one. You also help them developmentally, right? So they're going to grasp different things from different sports. And then also the injury part. When we're doing the same sport and the same thing over and over and over again, that repetitiveness can lead to injury down the road. So I think in all those areas, it really helps to give them a variety of things to do.
It's a physical and mental break for them also
Yeah,
too, I believe, doing something different, taking some,
absolutely.
and even doing a sport where they're not as good at is always good for them. It's always, mentally challenging for them. It's also one of those things too. It gives them a break, from the
Right.
expectations of the particular sport that they may be excelling at.
Yeah.
So, plus they may end up finding that's something that they enjoy doing more. I had a girl I trained who was a swimmer for years, got completely burned out by that time. She was a sophomore in high school and picked up lacrosse and ended up training it for a really nice scholarship
Nice.
in lacrosse, late in her career. Again, I never picked up a stick until she was a sophomore in high school, but
Wow.
discovered that she was really, really good at it because
Yeah.
she was an exceptional athlete and just was unfortunately very done with swimming. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
It can be hard as a parent too. I mean, my son right now, he's like all into football.
Sure.
But I've told him, I said, we got to play some other things too. I want you to, and we're a basketball family at our
I
house.
guess.
But anyway, my husband's very passionate about basketball, and that was, like I said, that was my background. But we're like, well, you at least have to have fun and play basketball sometimes. And then this spring, he decided he still wanted to stick with soccer. So I encouraged him to do that, even though it's not his, and he'll say to me, it's not my primary sport. But then he also decided to do cross country, which I had just encouraged him. I said, hey, it gets you in shape for
Sure.
football, right? And so you can put that kind of
Right.
spin on it. And I don't believe in forcing my kids to do. I let them choose what they want to do. But I also really think about, this has been something that's been on my mind a lot too lately. But I'm friends with people on Facebook, and they have to always post like, we've got this game tonight. We have this game. But I really feel like I want my kids to be kids too. So I'm trying really hard not to fall into that same like, oh, we have to be in a planned sport every night. We have to be doing something, or we're not going to make it. And I feel at times that pressure too. But then I'm reminded my kids are kids. Like, let them have fun. Like, let's just go throw the ball outside in the backyard. And we don't have to have an organized team thing every single night. And I can tell my kids really like, my kids want that too. Like, they want a day at home. They want, a break every once in a
Sure.
while. And
Absolutely.
some kids thrive on, having something to do every night. But sometimes I think as parents, we are just like trying to keep up with the other parents. And
Sure.
we feel that we have to have this schedule because it's like, if not, it's reflected on us as a parent. And we shouldn't feel that way. Like, it's okay. It's okay for kids to be kids and have fun.
Downtime
And
is a very good thing for them.
yeah,
So
and let them
absolutely
just
is.
play sports in the backyard with
Yeah.
their siblings or with us as parents. We can go out and play, right?
75% of the kids are participating in sports to hang out with their friends.
Yeah,
That's their goal for it. It really
right.
is. And that's statistics across the board has always proved that it's a
And that's
social.
great.
Absolutely, and
Yeah,
it's a great socializing event, and
it
there's so many great
is.
lessons to be learned from it. So talk about one of the things that we talked about with not early specialization with sports, but what dietary changes do young
Yeah.
athletes need to make to get them on a good track to maintain a long career? My goal is always to coach for longevity. I always want my kids to.
Yes.
I don't want to develop a wrecked 25-year-old who was excelling in sports, or female girl who was excelling in sports, was doing terrific, and now they're 25 and they don't want to do anything because they've got two bad knees and a bad hip, and from all the things that they did, um, where you can fall into the trap sometimes of looking at performance in the short term versus in the long
Right.
term, and you can have both. You can have a very high level of performance with longevity, but diet is a big portion of that. So let's talk a little bit about what we could do diet wise to help our athletes sustain their careers and have more effective careers.
Yeah. So I think just like on the training side, we have to keep it simple though, right?
Right.
So, and kids are way more picky than adults. So, but finding what they like. And I think the most important thing is variety. So just like we want a variety of activities that they're doing, a variety of foods is so important. And so, that they're eating foods from all the food groups. A lot of kids don't like fruits and vegetables. So how can we get them more excited about those types of foods? So those are some of just the basic things, right? That we're getting them a variety throughout the day. I know a lot of times, even as myself as a parent, we rely a lot on convenience foods, right? Because we eat a lot of meals in our car. Which I know there's some people. I even have family members like this that don't allow food in their car, but that does not roll in our car. Like
I think my
we,
family would have starved to death with
we would
with
too.
the sports activities
We
we're
would
into.
too.
Yes.
Last night was one of those nights too. Like we were eating dinner in the car, but how can we get more fruits and vegetables into it's hard when you're looking for fast, convenient
So that sounds like a
types
little
of
bit of prep
things.
time goes into this.
Yeah, well, not necessarily.
No.
I mean, you can just grab raw carrots or whatever, which is my kid's favorite. Carrots and cucumbers, they will eat any day. But packing
Lucky.
snacks that are apples and oranges, and trying to like And some of it doesn't take a lot of time, maybe at the grocery store, a little better planning. But I also slip things into my kids don't always appreciate it. Sometimes they figure it out, but I put onions and peppers like when I'm making tacos, I just cook it up with the meat or whatever. And
Sure.
sometimes they notice it and sometimes they don't. And, so just things like that I try to incorporate that might not take a lot of extra time, but how can I just try to get a few more healthful things? And I mean, I try to talk to my kids about why we eat some of these foods, but having a healthful snack for them, probably the most important for our athletes, is what they're eating right after a practice or game. So that's we call that recovery nutrition. And so if you can't, worry about anything else with nutrition, keep the nutrition part basic, eat balanced meals throughout the day. But if right after exercise, we can get some carbs and protein. So something as easy as peanut butter and crackers or an apple and peanut butter. Peanut butter is like one of my go-tos.
Sure.
It's so easy, but you could do like a trail mix or cheese and crackers, right? Chocolate milk is a huge
Yeah,
one.
we've
We
talked
talked
about
about
chocolate
that
milk has
before.
become
Yes.
has become the
So
miracle
it is, and
supplement. Yeah.
kids love it. So,
Hey, yeah.
it has the whey and casein protein are absorbed at different rates. It's got the carbohydrates from the lactose from the milk, plus some extra simple sugars from the chocolate. So, the absorption rate of it, of both the carbs and fats, is carbs and protein, is good. So,
Do
a
you have
lot of
some
research on that.
Yeah. Do you have some suggestions for parents? I know, particularly, it was really hard for me to get my youngest guy to eat enough protein because he just wasn't. He was a great fruits and vegetable guy, but he just
Good.
was not a protein guy.
Yeah.
So I know for him, like I would find other things like nuts and other things like that he would like to eat. Do you have some suggestions like for protein for getting protein into kids that necessary or a little bit more difficult with getting that into
Yeah.
their diet?
I mean, but if you can do peanut butter,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
or
He was
any
a big
nut
fan.
butters, I mean, I know there's lots of peanut allergies. There are more like granola bars and stuff that have added protein. So, those are something you could grab, that are, that have some extra protein added to them that kids usually,
Yeah.
will go for those types of things. I know like beans are great, but that's not a huge
Right.
that's not a huge turn on.
It's
And
always
nuts are not all kids get into nuts either,
right.
but I mean like a lot of kids like peanut butter, so that's an easier way, and you can put it
Yogurt
on
with
crackers, put it
yeah.
on yogurt,
Yogurt was
and
always a good one for us to
yeah,
go to. Yeah, that was
yeah,
one of those I found with him was really because he wasn't really much
absolutely.
of a meat eater, so he really eggs was another thing to it. Him at point he was really really tough on. We ended up
Yeah,
going to finding like a really good protein bars that were not. You have to also be really careful with a lot of the processed stuff. Just looking at the sugar content
right.
of them because some of them are just absolutely insane. They'd be better off just eating a straight up
Exactly.
Snickers bar than
Right.
eating some of the protein bars that are out there.
Right.
So
But and because of the keto diet thing too, there are more like protein cookies and protein. But again, you really want to check your labels,
right,
because then you're eating a lot of processed foods that maybe aren't, really trying to eat more whole foods is key. So more like your whole fruits and vegetables, trying to avoid some of the processed foods, because that again, the convenience of the processed foods is great. But we do have, a lot of extra things in there that aren't necessarily good for us. Sugar being one of them. So check your labels. Some sugar is fine, right? And the kids are burning it off. But it can be addicting, and it's just a lot of added sugar. We don't need
sure.
all of that all the
Yeah, the
time.
simpler, again,
Yeah,
4 ingredient foods are really the way that you
absolutely.
wanna go with. Talk a little bit about some of the myths that are currently out there about nutrition and some of the things that you're seeing, some of the trends that you're seeing that maybe, you'd like an opportunity to, um, change people's opinions on or change their ideas on.
Yeah. So, um, especially for adults, like of course the keto diet is the big one, like with the low carbs. And so again, just remembering carbs aren't your enemy. And it's really about the type of carbs you're eating. We haven't talked about that yet,
Sure.
but
We can go into that, absolutely.
yeah, not all carbs are created equal. So we have sugar, which is added to so many of our foods, and you would be really surprised if you when you really start looking at labels, which a few years ago, we do have a new regulation that our labels do have to tell us how many added sugars there are. So when you're looking at a label, you'll see carbohydrates, and then now you'll see added sugars. So that's really what we want to try to avoid. So I know some
The added
people...
sugar is a much bigger factor than just the overall carbohydrate
Right,
content.
absolutely. So I know, like, you look at like apple juice, for example, and you may see, well, it's got 38 carbs per serving. But then you look below and it says no added sugar. So all those carbohydrates are coming from the apples, right?
Right.
So there are sugars in there, fructose from the apple itself. But what we really want to try to avoid are the added sugars.
Which brings me to that point, like that whole thing, if it fits into my macros, used to drive me crazy. You know what I mean? Because you can have a bunch of grapes and a serving of cotton candy.
Right.
You can, and you can't tell me that eating that cotton candy, if it
Is
fits into your
equivalent.
macros, is equivalent to eating
Right.
grapes because of the fiber that you get,
Right.
the micronutrients, the minerals, all those other things, and really effective low sugar carbs.
Right.
And again, the burn rate on those. And we would explain a little bit about glycemic index and what that is exactly, and
Yeah.
why you want to avoid straight sugar versus
So when
naturally
it
occurring
comes to
sugars.
carbs, again, so your simple sugars, our body utilizes them more quickly. And so we call those have a high glycemic index. So when we consume them, our blood sugar goes up really fast. And then insulin has to come into play, and our body pulls that all into the cells. And guess what? It saves it for later. So then it gets put into storage, fat storage eventually. And
what happens to your appetite when that blood sugar goes
right.
like that?
Then and then a lot of times you're craving more. And so so we want to try to stick with more lower glycemic index foods, which are more of like your whole grains. And then foods with fiber. So when we're eating fruits and vegetables, eating the skin of them, eating whole grains, it's got fiber added, and then that slows the rise of our blood glucose down. And so keeps you fuller for longer. We don't have that big spike in the blood glucose level. Insulin doesn't have to work as hard there.
Which is also why you said adding protein into that too, because it has the same
Yes,
effect. So if you're
it
combining
does.
your carbs and your proteins, which you talked about, like after exercise, why that's so important that you're getting your recovery, the carbs are transporting that protein into your system, correct, and also helping to control that appetite.
Yeah, and after exercise is actually the moment. So what happens during exercise is we use our stored carbohydrates. It's called glycogen. So during exercise, our body starts with the blood glucose, and then it will use our glycogen stores. And so your glycogen stores are kind of like the gas tank on your car. So that's how I like to describe it. And so you're not going to go on a very long trip, right, without your gas tank full. So if you exercise and you utilize your glycogen, and then you come to exercise the next day, if you don't replenish that glycogen, then you're starting your exercise with the empty tank. So this is really important for especially our athletes who they want to show up to practice every day. The goal is to show up to practice every day and have the most energy possible, right? Because eating healthier is not going to necessarily just make you a better athlete, but it should give you the energy to be able to train at a higher level. And when you train at a higher level, day in, day out, then that's what's going to make you a better athlete. So that's really where the science of sports nutrition's at. So we want to have the fuel in the tank, right? That we can go at our best every single day. And so recovery nutrition is so important to that because you just got done exercising. Glycogen should be low. If you were exercising hard, you use that fuel in the tank. And so to refuel it most effectively, you have a 30-minute window after exercise is where your cells are most permeable. So they're going to absorb that carbohydrate. They're going to absorb the protein. When we exercise, our muscles are being broken down. So the protein goes to help muscle repair. The carbohydrates go to fill that glycogen tank. And so we fill that up for next time so that everything's ready to go. And most athletes, it's an everyday thing, right? Especially once we get to high school, college level, we're practicing or playing on a daily basis. So every day we have to refuel.
And as your demands get higher, also
They do.
your caloric expenditure needs to go up a little bit also to match that.
Yes.
So one of the last things I want to ask you about is nutrition timing. I know you said it's very important. How about spacing of your meals, like for a young athlete? How do you want to set up your daily eating schedule? Is that important or?
Really, the timing, that's where sports nutrition is so different than regular nutrition, is the timing. And so it really depends on what your schedule is.
Okay.
So the key things I would say for athletes, I mean, without getting into all the details, but number one, what if you have game or practice, how much food can you tolerate before, right? Because you want to top off your fuel tanks right
Right.
before. So eating before is helpful, but I'm an example. I can eat right before I go exercise and it won't bother me. But some people need a few hours, right? So you have to figure that out. And sports nutrition's a trial and error thing. Never try something new on a day of a very important event, or that's with everything. Your equipment, your diet, okay? Do not try. You go to a race and you're like, they're passing out these new bars, right? Do not try it on that day,
Not the
okay?
time for a trial run.
No, it's not. It's all about trial, and you have to try it during practices, right?
Gotcha.
So get your rhythm down, figure out what works for you, what doesn't work for you, what foods work right before, what you can't tolerate right before. And so the timing is so important, but it's so individualized. So there's no like saying there it's set for one person or another. But obviously, the closer to the event, you would eat a little bit less. If you have a little more time out, you could eat a little bit bigger meal. So those are some things to keep in mind. And then the key is, again, the recovery nutrition. Preferably if you can get something small in, some carbs and protein within 30 minutes. 30 minutes goes by so fast when you're done with your game, right? Go to the locker room, coach talks to you, you get changed. 30 minutes is a blink of an eye. But you want to try to get something in that time if you can, and then have a meal with carbs, protein, and fat all within like a 2-hour time period after your especially like a game or something
Sure.
a really hard practice.
I can imagine too, if you let it go longer than that, then you're really, really hungry, and then pretty much that
Right.
your best decisions on what to eat is not made when you're super starving.
That's true.
That's
We
usually when
all
most of us made our bad decisions about what we want to eat when
Right.
we're doing that. I want to ask your opinion from myself for what do you think about like eating later at night for athletes? Is it because I know a lot of times kids are just like, I just don't have time. I've got,
Yeah.
I don't get home till 8 o'clock at night. Is it an issue with kids eating later at night?
No, I wouldn't. If you're an athlete, I wouldn't be too worried about it. Now for weight loss, it's a different story, right?
Right,
Going
right.
eating and then going to bed's not great, but for an athlete, you got to get your calories in when you can and how you can sometimes too. And their schedules are so busy. And so if that's the time you can get in calories, then calories are calories. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I
and
agree. I'm glad to hear you say that.
there's severe consequences when we're short on calories too. And so there's a lot of detrimental effects when athletes aren't, and we see that issue like under eating, and there's some very long-term consequences for hormone levels, bone health, et cetera, if we're not getting enough calories. So athletes, if they're performing, they're working hard, they need those calories.
Yeah, I'm so glad to hear you say that because I've had used to have athletes that I can't eat breakfast. I just can't. It sets my stomach or whatever.
Right.
And I started doing a breakfast before bed thing where I
Yeah.
would let them like eat late, have something. Don't let it disturb your sleep, obviously, because sleep is the most important thing.
Very
possible.
true.
But if you can have something later instead of having it for breakfast, you just don't want to be running a calorie deficit. People assume automatically in our country that kids are getting enough calories all the time.
Right.
And if they really analyze their diet and we look at some of the empty calories that they're really not a lot of times getting enough protein or enough variety in their diet of proteins or the carbs to go along with them or the
Right.
nutrients that go along with that because they're again not timing it correctly.
Right.
So. Well, thank you. Oh my gosh, we could probably do this for another 4 or 5 hours.
We
but
could.
Thank you so much for your information.
Thank
Definitely have you
you.
back again, and look forward to speaking with you again. All of your information is here, so if people want to contact you, just have them contact you through your information you have provided for you. And thank you so much for taking your time. And we'll
Thank you.
definitely do this again soon because I
Awesome.
have a lot more questions running through my head right now. So, all right, thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.